Dion.
And this is Trust Your Doctor, that podcast where we fight dragons. Because this week we watched Frontier in Space.
Written by Malcolm Hulke.
Directed by Paul Bernard.
And aired in February and March of 1973. Another Malcolm Hulke serial.
Yeah. We were just looking now, he's written pretty much all of Kiyan's favorite stories.
Yeah, he has. And this one is no exception to the rule that he usually writes stories that I enjoy. Because I enjoyed this story.
So did I. I think, well, it's my favorite Third Doctor serial. I'm not unwilling to go that far.
I am. But it wasn't bad. I mean, it was pretty good. I mean, actually.
Yep.
First two episodes sort of misled me as to what it would actually be about.
I think that was the point.
Yeah. But yeah, we should just start right in episode 1 like we usually do. And
no, we should just start with episode 6.
We should go backwards. Yeah. If there's one story that would ruin, it would be this one.
That's a good point, actually.
It starts off, obviously, with the TARDIS materializing. You know, they haven't... I believe since the Doctor and Joe are wearing the same outfits that they were last serial, which we made mention of because they're, you know, pretty unique for the Doctor and Joe. You know, the Doctor was wearing the green shirt and whatnot, and Joe was actually wearing something sensible. And they were
not for long.
Yeah, well, and they start off this story wearing the same thing. So I thought maybe this takes place right after the previous one.
Yeah, possibly. But you never know. They may just shoehorn in a story in between in the novel somewhere, or audio dramas, or comics, or whatever.
Or any of the other types of media I have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they materialize on this spaceship.
Yeah, some sort of Earth spaceship. Cargo ship C982.
Can't believe you remembered that.
I just read it right now.
Oh, okay.
And, you know, Joe looks out the window and the Doctor's busy inside the TARDIS, I think getting something out of the TARDIS.
He's doing something or the other.
Oh, he's examining the instruments because he wants to know where he is, because I guess he was aiming for somewhere else and he kind of missed.
And then Metabulus 3, no.
Probably.
Yeah, well, they've been trying to get there, unsuccessfully so far. You know, they made mention of that in Last of the Gadarene, so, you know, they have only a few more serial, or one more serial to get there. I don't know, because they didn't make mention in the book of whether they had actually gotten there or not.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the Doctor's whole goal in the first few minutes of the episode is to find out where they are, and he kind of just dismisses Joe.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because I know you like Joe, and I kind of don't. But I will admit, in this serial, she was actively trying to, I don't want to say be useful, but she was actively involved in the plot, or at least tried to be, and the Doctor kind of shot her down at several points.
Yeah, and this is one of them, and the next one comes up in episode 2. And then they kind of get separated for a bit. But, yeah. But I was glad that Jo was doing something in this serial, and she was actually, you know, getting things done and advancing the plot in some way for once.
In episode 4, I don't know, I really liked what she did, and I really liked that whole scene in general, but as usual, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Right. So anyway, Joe's looking out the window, and there's this weird sound and this weird visual effect. Side note, the sound was really painful to listen to for me in the first episode. That might be because I was listening on different headphones than I usually use, but it was just really annoying.
Yeah, see, I didn't see it that way at all, or hear it that way, rather. I wasn't annoyed by it. In fact, I completely forgot what it sounded like after episode 1, because after episode 1, Dylan texted me and he was like, did you notice that grating sound? And I was like, wait, what sound? I mean, it was an integral part of the plot. I just didn't remember what it sounded like until it kept reoccurring. And
right. And so
apparently, just to interject it,
go ahead.
It was less painful for you in episodes 2 onward.
Yeah. I don't know why that was, but it was really annoying in episode 1. Well, anyway, the sound causes Joe and the people on the ship to see the ship differently. And you don't find out it's caused by the sound later, but I'm just going to mention that it is now. And the ship appears to change and then suddenly turns into a draconian ship.
Right. We didn't mention that there's a ship approaching the ship the Doctor and Joe are on.
The ship approaching the ship.
Yeah, and it turns into a draconian ship, and the Draconians, I believe this is their first, well, it's their first appearance. I believe it's their first mention.
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe I just want to believe they were somehow mentioned in Colony in Space. I don't know. But no, just to go back a little bit, the Doctor does mention Colony in Space when he deduces that they're on a ship, or they're on one of Earth's ships, you know, in the era of Earth, the Earth Empire, which was mentioned in Colony in Space, and the mutants.
Yep.
Those two serials both took place at the end, or sort of the twilight years of Earth's Empire, and this serial takes place, I guess, I don't know if the Doctor said at the beginning or like sometime during the peak.
I think he said the early years. Something
like that, but Earth is at war with, not at war, but they were at war with Draconia, which is another planetary empire that's expanding. It's I guess territory isn't the right word because it's space, but they've come to a treaty after the war, and that's why the serial's Frontier in Space, because you know this takes place in the frontier between the Draconian Empire and the Earth Empire.
Right, and
don't think I could have explained that more poorly, but go on.
I mean, you might have, but anyway, we won't try. So the so-called Draconians board the ship, and it's actually none other than the Ogrons.
Yeah, who knew they would come back? Well, they already have come back, but not prominently.
I'll just make a mention here. I was actually reading that they originally intended it for it to be the Cybermen.
Yep.
Then they changed it, like, at the last minute to the Ogrons. I don't know why.
Thankfully, because of what... I wouldn't want it to be the Cybermen because of what happens in episode 6. I think that would just be overkill.
Yeah. I think also maybe they had a rights issue. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know if people know this, but in this era of Doctor Who, because of the way the show is written and how they kind of pawn out the writing onto other writers, the writers actually get the rights to any characters they create for the show, which is why Terry Nation at this point still has the rights to the Daleks.
Yeah, and why the Yeti, I think, aren't going to come back.
Yeah, because they belong to Mervyn Haseman and Henry Lincoln. So, you know, maybe there's a rights issue with having the Cybermen appear. But anyway, the Ogrons show up. They stun the people on the ship, lock up Joe and the Doctor, and make off with the TARDIS, and then episode 1 ends.
Right, and the humans on the ship, I think it's only 2 guys, see the Ogrons, due to the weird sound, as Draconians. And, you know, this is obviously a big deal, since Earth and Draconia have a treaty, and, you know, it appears as if Draconians just attacked their cargo ship, and they were carrying flour, by the way. It's not important at all, but it's what they were carrying.
Right. So episode 2 picks up when a ship hears the distress beacon signal from C982 and shows up and kind of boards. Because the Doctor and Joe escape, only to immediately run into the boarding party of the military ship that Earth is sent to rescue the, you know, cargo ship.
Mm-hmm. And they try to explain the situation, and as usual, things go horribly wrong. The rescue party does not take kindly to the Doctor and Joe being there, and the stunned guy, the 2 guys manning the ship, sort of throw the Doctor and Joe under the boat. Or under the bus. Under the boat. What am I saying? Under the bus, rather.
Coining a new phrase.
Well, being under a boat would be a lot more deadly, actually, than being under a bus. I mean, depending how big the boat is. God, I just can't talk today. But yeah, they mentioned that they don't... Well, first the guy, he's sort of coming out of a daze, and he mentions he doesn't exactly remember when the Doctor and Joe boarded. Mm-hmm. And then he just says, yeah, they're stowaways.
I guess it's a case of... They don't remember, so they just kind of latch onto whatever explanation they can find and just go with it.
Possibly. Maybe the sound sort of affected their short-term memory or something like that. I don't know. We also didn't mention that Joe sees the Ogrons as Drashigs, so they get their glorious return. No.
The mandated one return before they can be written out forever. So the Doctor and Joe get taken to Earth, and they demand to be taken to someone in higher authority because the Doctor didn't see them as Draconians or Drashigs or whatever, presumably because he was in the TARDIS and didn't actually hear the tone.
Or maybe it's just something he was not affected by because, one, he's a Time Lord and they're pretty OP. But, it's not really explained, so, make what you will of that. God, really can't talk today. We also didn't mention the scene where the Doctor and Joe are locked up on their way to Earth, and this is another scene where Joe tries to be proactive, and she's trying to think of plans to escape and plans to get to Earth, and the Doctor makes the comment, Joe, we're already going to Earth, so all we have to do is just sit in this cell and wait.
And she was like, oh, yeah. Not gonna deny that was a good point on the Doctor's part, but still, poor Joe.
Yeah. I did feel a little sorry for Joe in this serial getting shut down so much.
She's finally getting her moments to shine.
She does in episode 4, I will admit. She's pretty awesome in 4. So is the Doctor, and so is the other guy who's integral to the plot.
The other guy. Brilliant. Well, anyway, episode 2, they actually end up getting to Earth. They get thrown in a cell, which is where they'll spend the next, 2 episodes. So they're locked up, and we get some backstory here that we've already explained. The president of Earth, the Earth Empire has a president. I guess it's an empire in name only. I don't know. Must be, although they have colonies. They mention later they have colonies.
Either way, the president talks with. He was the vice president, right?
Who, Commander Williams?
Yeah.
No, I think he was just head of the military.
Oh.
Because later he states that in any military matters, he's allowed to override the president. And the president can only override Williams with a full backing of the Senate.
Sounds...
remarkably convoluted, I know.
Yeah, and also sounds like a lot of power is vested in Williams, but...
Well, Williams only has power over military matters. It's only in military matters he can...
I guess.
Overrule the president.
Yeah, either way, the dialogue between these two is where we get the backstory with Draconia, and we also find out that Williams caused a war.
Well, we only find that out we find out he was the one who destroyed the ship briefly in episode 3, actually. But we don't find out exactly what happened with that incident until episode 5.
Yeah, they make the comment in passing. I guess it was in episode 3. I'm not really sure.
It was actually cut down. It was meant to be this whole explanation about how they were there for a peace treaty, and then Williams blew them up, but they were unarmed, so he blew them up with a exhaust explosion or whatever. But it was all cut because runtime,
Yeah.
They were running too long, so it became just a brief mention of, hey, he blew up a ship. But yes.
He's pretty obstinate. He usually is in opposition to the president, who I'm not sure was named. Was the president named, or was she just the president?
I think she was just the president, to be honest. The Ogrons attempt an escape plan for the Doctor and Joe at this point, using their hypnotic beam sound thing again to make everyone think they're Draconians. And episode 2 ends when the Ogrons get to the Doctor's cell.
Right. And just briefly going back to when the Doctor and Joe were locked up on the ship again, I think Joe makes the comment, well, the Ogrons were working for the Daleks last time, so, potentially they are this time, which is a good point. And I think the Doctor also shuts this down. I guess shut down isn't the right term here, but he sort of says, no, I don't think they're working for the Daleks, because what would the Daleks have to gain from...
Draconia and Earth going to war.
I think that is what he says, right? Because
wouldn't
the Daleks actually have much to gain from that? mean, pitting the two most powerful empires against each other.
Well, are they the most powerful? We don't know how powerful the Dalek Empire is at this point. The Doctor may know more about the Dalek Empire than he's letting on.
They do mention that Earth and Draconia are the two most prominent empires in the Milky Way. Not that Skaro. I mean,
I don't think Skaro is in the Milky Way. Didn't we determine during the Daleks' master plan that they were from a different galaxy?
I believe so. I don't know, but
yeah, a different galaxy.
They'd still have a lot to gain from pitting Earth and Draconia against each other. You know, potential control over the entire galaxy once the two sort of blow each other to smithereens. But either way, the Doctor doesn't think it's the Daleks.
Well, he also mentions that the Ogons are mercenaries, so they actually work for anybody who'll pay them enough.
Yeah. So they're working for someone, but it's not the Daleks.
It's not necessarily the Daleks, he says.
Right.
He doesn't completely shut down the idea that it's the Daleks.
There's also the scene with the Draconian ambassador who talks to the president and what's his name? Williams. So the Draconian ambassador for Earth is also the Draconian prince, and Williams is annoyed that Draconia has attacked an Earth cargo ship, and the ambassador says, no, that's impossible. And, you know, Williams sort of tries to call him out for, okay, you're lying, obviously. Mm-hmm. And he says, no, Draconians never lie, which is not true. You know, I sort of thought the Draconians, I sort of liked the Draconians for a little bit, because they were, you know, quote unquote, sort of like this honorable race that I guess didn't have the didn't have the capacity to lie and, stuck by their word, but nope.
In the introduction when they were saying they were very honorable and there was that, oh yeah, the Draconian honor and whatever, I got a very Klingon vibe from Star Trek, because in Star Trek the Klingons are usually regarded as the most honorable race, and their entire culture is based around honor in battle, and dying in battle is better than dying any other way because you die an honorable death.
Spartans.
Yeah.
But do they completely break their word?
Well, they don't claim not to lie, so they don't have to. We also forgot to mention
like the Draconian ambassador. God,
I actually like this scene.
They just forgive him later in the serial. Okay, I'm done ranting. Sorry.
I actually like this scene where the Doctor is complaining to the men that he wants to see someone in power to tell them their story, and they're like, you'll see someone in power, and then it cuts to Williams like, it's fantastic, a ship that materializes inside another ship, it has to be made up.
Of course. Gotta have someone disbelieving in, the TARDIS.
He's just a warmonger, and when the Doctor meets him, he's like, let me congratulate you, sir, you have the most totally closed mind out of anyone I've met so far.
The President and Williams sort of go back and forth on whether or not to use the mind detectors on the Doctor and Joe to determine whether they're lying, because they think the Doctor and Joe are Draconian spies. Yeah. And the mind detectors, I believe they were called, or mind probes.
Mind probes.
Yeah, the mind probes are basically lie detecting machines. They decide to... They go back and forth between wanting to use them and not. They threatened to use them multiple times, and I was like, for God's sake, just use them already and find out that they're not lying instead of standing there arguing about it.
Well, Williams ends up getting the authorization from the President to use him, and discovers the Doctor is telling the same story in his brain as he is out loud, and he believes that they're under draconian mental conditioning.
Right. So that was completely pointless.
But they decide, hey, actually the President decides that she thinks that she can get through to Joe without the Doctor's influence. So she exiles the Doctor to the lunar penal colony and leaves Joe on Earth with her.
Right, we also forgot to mention the part where the Draconians tried to employ the Doctor.
Oh yeah, that second escape attempt made by the actual Draconians, not the Ogron Draconians. Yeah, the
Draconians try and rescue the Doctor, and they succeed, and they bring him to the, I guess it's the Draconian embassy.
Yeah.
Looked sort of Asian influenced, / futuristic.
I think their whole culture was supposed to be Asian influenced. I think this whole thing was supposed to be the
China
Asian
and Rome.
the like Eastern and Western worlds with a very tenuous peace treaty going on.
Yeah, I can see that, definitely. With the draconian costumes. We haven't explained what the draconians look like, by the way. But the doctor, he escapes from the draconian embassy once he realizes that they want to... God, what do they even think?
Well, they want to use the mind probe on him because they think that by having him prisoner, they can find out the humans' plans for attacking the draconians.
Right, this was their underhanded, sneaky tactic I was mentioning earlier. And the doctor escapes by dramatically flipping over in his chair. They have him sitting in this chair, not bound or anything, and he rolls backwards to the back of the chair, is parallel to the ground, and gets up and Venusian karates his way out of there.
Let's be honest, that scene was awesome.
It's pretty cool.
Then he runs out of the embassy and the draconians are all shooting at him and the humans show up and the doctor's like, oh, well, I guess I'm captured again.
Very, very over-dramatized.
But yeah,
whatever.
He gets sent to the lunar penal colony where he meets this Professor Dale, I'm just reading now, who's part of this party called the Peace Party, who I guess have been speaking out against the attacks, or being attacked by the Draconians, been speaking out against war.
Right. And apparently they're a big faction on Earth. But Professor Dale also does mention that there are probably more of them in the penal colony on the moon than there are on Earth. And this was the first of a few times during this serial that I hoped, and still do hope, that we see more stories that will probably be written by Malcolm Hulke set in this, sort of Earth Empire. Because there's a lot of lore here. There's the whole thing with the Peace Party, and there's a lot going on. And I feel like Malcolm Hulke is at least trying to flesh it out well with what he's given, and detail different periods in this Earth Empire that he's created.
Yeah,
and I hope we see some more of this. And there's other points later in the serial that make me think that.
Well, presumably we will. This is, it should be noted, the first Earth Empire. In the reboot, Russell T Davies writes a story that's explicitly set in the third Earth Empire. So I think Russell T Davies might do that specifically to avoid continuity with this era, because you know how Doctor Who fans will get with continuity, especially with the Daleks. Good lord. But yes, the Doctor talks with Professor Dale about his plan, so to speak. Well, not his plan, his story, and Professor Dale lets him in on the fact that he's going to try escape. Well, the Doctor kind of figures it out, but Dale lets him in on it, and Dale believes the Doctor's story.
For the first time this serial. And the Doctor mentions that, too. And we find out that Dale has made his own underhanded deal with Cross, who's in charge of the penal colony. And, obviously, since it's a penal colony, he's also a prisoner, but he's in charge. So in exchange for a pardon when the Peace Party comes to power, Cross is letting Dale escape with one other inmate. And the Doctor and Dale have been talking with this other inmate for a while now. I don't think he's ever named, actually.
I think so.
And I think he assumed, poor guy, I think he assumed that Dale was going to take him. He was also a member of the Peace Party. And, it would be a logical choice because he knew Professor Dale. He was, I guess, enrolled in one of his Professor Dale's classes. And so, they had that prior relationship. So, when Professor Dale reveals his plan to the Doctor and this guy stands up like, okay, Professor Dale, let's get out of here. And he's the one, actually, who had been the dude that was either unnamed or I can't remember his name. He's the one who'd been wanting to make an escape, I guess. So he gets up to go with Professor Dale, and Professor Dale just kind of slowly pats him back down into his seat, and he's like, no, son, I'm taking the Doctor. And he doesn't put up any resistance, but I felt bad for him.
Well, Professor Dale makes a good point in that bringing back the other guys, you're just bringing back another fighter, but bringing back the Doctor, you can tell his story, and once his story gets out, it can change the tide of public opinion.
Yeah, no, I fully understand why he wanted to bring out the Doctor. But at the same time, you gotta feel bad for this guy. Like, he was so ready to just leave.
Yeah, you gotta feel bad for him, but then you gotta realize if the doctor hadn't gone, the other guy had, they would have just ended up dying. Because we forgot to mention that it turns out the doctor and Joe are wanted criminals on Sirius 4, and the president has to, I guess under some law of the Empire, cede the prisoners to Sirius 4 because Sirius 4 is granted Dominion status.
Which is presumably one rank above colony status.
Yeah, as a Dominion, they're basically autonomous. They can make their own rules and laws, but they still have to serve under the Empire.
Think territory to state.
Think
state
Puerto Rico. Is what you're saying.
Yeah. Right, and the Sirius 4 commissioner, I guess they called him, shows up at, the president's office, I guess. And guess who it is? Guess.
The war chief?
Yeah, the war chief comes. No.
The monk?
No, it's obviously the master.
I was really hoping it was going to be the monk.
No, you weren't.
No, I wasn't, because I totally didn't see this reveal coming. And that's true, I actually didn't see this coming.
Yeah, I didn't see it coming either. And, they didn't, I guess, according to you and a lot of other people, they blatantly telegraphed it in Colony in Space.
I felt like it was telegraphed in Colony in Space.
Yeah, I think I was probably just being dumb while watching it and not expecting it to be the master here, but I didn't see this one coming at all. Probably because, unlike Colony in Space, they didn't beat to death the fact that an inspector was coming. Here they just kind of mentioned it in passing once, and then it turns out to be the master, and you're like,
well, you are like, because now the whole tide of the serial has changed. Originally, you just think, okay, the enemy's going to be the Ogrons, the Doctor's going to go beat up the Ogrons, it's going to be done.
Well, no, you know someone's behind the Ogrons, but you don't know it's the master.
Yeah, but you would still be like, it's just the Ogrons. But then the monster shows up. Now the stakes are like 7 notches higher.
Well, no, I remember we were discussing, who could be behind the Ogrons before we watched episode 2. No, not 2. What am I saying? 3 is when I think he shows up. I believe.
He shows up in 3.
Yeah, he shows up in 3. I remember we were discussing, like, who could it be? You jokingly said, it's the Autons. But no, obviously.
Could have been.
Wouldn't have made sense, but I wouldn't have minded.
Hey, maybe they're fighting a proxy war with the Ogrons, and secretly they're all fighting the Daleks.
That would be even more convoluted than what this serial turns out to be.
Who wouldn't pay to see an Auton Dalek fight? Auton Cybermen. Now there's a fight. The Autons and the Cybermen. The plastic people versus the metal people. Who will win?
Presumably the metal people.
But the plastic people are an entire consciousness. The Cybermen are just individuals with no emotion.
And the plastic people are arguably smarter and more competent than the metal people. But that's another story for probably never.
If you're a writer out there, write that story. That's a gold mine right there.
Yes, you're sitting on millions in dollars in profit. Or you would be if these characters weren't copyrighted. But I just want to say, when the master showed up, for about 2 seconds, I was like, wow, they're going for another, it's the master type thing again. They've been doing this a lot lately, and they've been actually pretty good about not letting you know who it is. But I'm kind of tired of it. But then I realized, that was in Last of the Gadarene. My bad.
Wow. Yeah, the last time he appeared on the show was actually The Sea Devils, which was written by Malcolm Hulke.
Yep.
So there you go. I guess they're just throwing the master serials on him like, hey, we need a master serial for this season. Malcolm, hey!
He does a good job of writing the master.
How's it going, buddy?
Malcolm
X.
in the middle.
Wow, we went for completely different references there. Whoa. So anyway, yes, I think they did the reveal pretty fantastically. And I think the serial was the best master serial, at least. Especially for how it's different from all the other ones, which I'll talk about when we get there to the end. But anyway, the master reveals himself as the commissioner of Sirius 4, and he goes and gets Joe, and they have a fight back and forth, because Joe doesn't believe that the master is on her side right now. right now being the key operative term. But eventually she goes with him because I guess it's better than staying in the cell forever.
He persuades her. God, I just felt bad for Joe. Like, I know I often get on her case for being incompetent, but here I just felt bad for her because one of the first things the master says when he walks into her cell is, "I'm going to get you to leave this cell." And she says, "No, you're not. I'll never listen to you, master." And lo and behold, at the end of the conversation, she leaves the cell with him.
Hey, to be fair, he made a pretty convincing case.
Yeah, but the minute you start arguing with the master, you've already lost.
This is true. So he decides to go up to the lunar colony, which, meanwhile, on the lunar colony,
which actually turns out, semi good for the Doctor, because he doesn't die. Due to the master going up to the lunar colony.
Well, we haven't explained
death.
The cliffhanger.
Right, the cliffhanger at the end of 3. Basically, how the Doctor and Cross are going to leave the colony is that they're going to walk. I guess the Doctor, Dale mentions they have a 10-minute walk to wherever it is they're going to leave the moon.
Ship.
Yeah, some sort of ship. So they need to go into the airlock, put on their spacesuits, and leave. So,
they get in the room and they put on the suits and they're about to put on the oxygen tanks when the Doctor realizes they're empty and that the door is locked behind them now.
And that Cross has just started siphoning all the air out of the room.
And then episode 3 ends.
Dun, dun, dun.
But it's okay, because in episode 4, the monster shows up, opens the door, and the Doctor's like, "Oh, it's you."
And the master makes the comment, "Well, what do you mean, Doctor? I've just saved your life." So the master holds. Well, he holds conference with someone above Cross.
Mm-hmm. Because we forgot to mention Cross is actually a prisoner on the colony.
No, we mentioned that.
Did we?
Yeah.
Did we mention that he's I don't think we did.
No, we did. We specifically mentioned, it's a penal colony and Cross is in charge, but he's still a prisoner.
But, the guy above Cross seems also to be involved in some shady business because the master indicates that Cross was obviously working on his orders, so the guy lets the Doctor go to the master, and they head off in their ship towards Ogron space.
Right, the master also kind of convinces him to do so because he's a commissioner from Sirius 4, and he's entitled to take the Doctor due to his criminal charges on Sirius 4.
Yeah, and the master mentions kind of a weird line that, like, his employers are the ones interested in the Doctor.
Yeah. So, you kind of get the gist that, the master was obviously behind the Ogrons, but there might be someone behind the master here.
Mm-hmm.
Sure that never comes into play, actually.
Well, anyway, the Doctor and Joe are heading off, and then the master reveals that there's closed-circuit cameras on the cell that the Doctor and Joe are trapped in. And
they spend most of this serial locked in cells, I just want to mention.
Well, they enact an escape plan from the master's cell. They conference and come up with it right before the master gets to the control room to look at the closed circuit cameras, which I might just want to add was blatantly a redress of the ship from the beginning.
Yeah, I guess now that you mentioned it, I didn't think of that while watching it, but yeah. Yeah, and the master also decides to read War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells for whatever reason.
Is he hinting at the Ice Warriors being his employers? They are from Mars.
Yeah, but they devise this plan, and this plan is just maybe not brilliant, but fun to watch. Because episode 4 was great. Episode 4 was one of my favorite Third Doctor episodes at all.
Episode 4 was pretty fantastic. If not only because it was fun to watch, but also because the Doctor explains a lot of his actions for the first 3 seasons that he was on the show.
Right. We should probably explain their plan first before. So the Doctor has barbed wire in a shoe. No, it's metal. It's just a metal
saw
string-ish type thing.
Yeah, it has a name. It's a specific type of saw, but I don't know it off the top of my head.
Yeah, but it's malleable, right? It's like
Yeah.
a metal wire.
Yeah. There's an actual name for it. I just don't know what it is.
Yeah. The doctor mentions it, I believe, but yeah, so the doctor has his back, or he's facing the camera, so his back is away from the camera, and he has his hands behind his back, sort of sawing away at the bars, while Joe sits in front of him, and they have this long, long discussion about how the doctor came to be at unit. And why don't you go ahead and explain that, since you liked this scene so much?
Well, I mean, you liked it too, but okay. Well, the doctor just basically explains that... First, he explains his problem with the Brigadier is that the Brigadier is too military-minded. Well, actually, that's the last thing he explains, but we'll do it first. Because I know we've been harping on the show for not giving the Brigadier the time of day that he deserves.
His time in the sun. Just gotta mention that every episode. It's the new Tigana.
Dang it. So he's explaining that, while he likes working with the Brigadier is just too military-minded, and I mean, he mentions that that's just the way the Brigadier was brought up, that the Brigadier was brought up as a military mind, and that's all he's known for his entire life. So he's not like he hates the Brigadier for it, but it does make it hard to work with the Brigadier for the Doctor.
Right. You wonder, because the Doctor and Joe go on with their dialogue, and eventually it turns into Joe's monologue, and we'll explain all of this. We'll detail what they said, but you have to wonder how much of all of this was just them putting on a show for the Master so he wouldn't notice what they were doing, and how much of it was genuine. I think a lot of it was genuine.
Yeah, I think most, if not all of it, was genuine.
Yeah.
I mean, the Doctor also talks about how he was put on trial by the Time Lords for interfering with other cultures, and how he told Joe how he believed that they should do more than just watch and they should interfere, and then he was exiled to Earth, and that's how he came to be at UNIT. Then we find out how Joe actually ended up at UNIT.
We found that out right in the first episode. We knew her uncle got her the job.
Well, we didn't know that she keeps talking with her family, and everybody thinks she's doing all these James Bondy things, and she's just filing the Brigadier's paperwork.
At least she gets to go on life-threatening adventures with the Doctor.
And almost get married on Peladon.
And almost die numerous times throughout this serial and others.
And save the world multiple times over.
And go back and forth between being horribly incompetent and terrifically competent. And everything else Joe does.
Joe's just so lovable.
Yeah, not even. Her retrospective is going to be interesting. That's all I'll say. Now. For now, at least. But the Doctor eventually makes this comment, like, sometimes you just gotta cut off ties with people or something like that.
He says he's gotta cut through the red tape of the Brigadier.
Right.
Because the Brigadier's always trying to hold the Doctor back with his, gotta go through the official channels, Doctor. And the Doctor's like, nope, sorry, bye, Brigadier, I'm going now, I'm getting in Bessie, bye.
Right, but obviously it's just code for, I've cut through the metal bar. Let's put our plan into action. So Joe, repositions herself more in front of the Doctor, and then, props to Katie Manning for this, because I know it's her job, but this was a really long monologue. It was just Joe rambling on and on and on while the Doctor escaped from the cell. Joe blocked the camera, obviously, and the Doctor went around, and the Doctor leaves the ship.
Yeah, he gets a spacesuit and leaves the ship.
I don't remember why he did that.
To get to the flight deck.
Oh, okay, I guess there's
without
no
the Master knowing.
Right, because the Master would see, because he's in the closed-circuit TV room, which is monitoring other corridors. And yeah, Katie Manning makes this whole long monologue pretending to talk to the Doctor, and the Master doesn't notice for a while.
Yeah,
for a long time, actually.
Well, until the Master has to make a course correction, and he does, and then Joe starts breaking down because the Doctor was outside when he made the course correction. She thinks he's dead, again.
He's not. He hung on.
Well, he didn't hang on. He actually flew away from the ship and propelled himself back with his oxygen tank.
Oh, right. And meanwhile, the Doctor has made it to, the Master catches on when Joe starts breaking down, so he goes to see what's up. Probably he already knew that the Doctor wasn't there anymore, or broken out. But the Doctor, at that point, busts into the control room and realizes the Master isn't there. So the Master gets back to the cell, Joe tries to cover up the fact that the doctor's not there, but it doesn't work. The master already knows, and Joe says, "Oh, he was outside when you made your course correction." The master just laughs and says, "He's probably thousands of miles away by now." But then the doctor takes off his belt and whips the master or something like that.
Yeah.
He sneaks up on him.
Then they kind of fight for a bit. Actually, I think the monster figures that just in case the doctor's on board, he shoves Joe into the airlock and yells over the camera that if the doctor's on board, he's going to come out or he's going to eject Joe out the airlock.
Yep.
And he shows up, they battle for a bit, and then the monster gains the upper hand, the doctor gives him his gun, and then they get boarded by the Draconians, because it turns out the course correction took them into Draconian space.
The actual Draconians this time, obviously.
So they get captured again, thrown in the cell, put under guard, and the Draconians are going to take them back to Draconian space. But the monster seems totally unfazed and activates a secret transponder he had on him, and then episode 4 ends.
Transponder? Is that a word?
Yes.
Oh. Huh. Well, you learn something new every day. Unfortunately. No, I don't know.
That XKCD about like 10,000 people learn something for the first time every day, whatever. The 100,000 or whatever.
Well, that's not that impressive. I mean, babies. So, I'm surprised they didn't make that comment in the comic, considering how snarky and sarcastic it is. But anyway, yeah, they're getting taken to Draconian space, and they
touchdown.
Yeah, they get there actually,
and talk to the Draconian Emperor. And it's revealed that the Doctor's been to Draconia before, under the 15th Emperor, I think.
Yeah. And this is another part of this serial that I hope gets fleshed out more. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if we had another story detailing how the Doctor first met the Draconians. And, you know, I think it would be interesting.
It would have to be a story set before this story, though.
Yeah.
You think they would... I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but do you think they would willingly show a story set before the continuity of the show? I mean,
you see have a point. I guess it could be in novels.
Because the show moves forward in the timeline of the Doctor. So doing an episode or serial that demonstrates his meeting with the Draconians would have to be set before this serial.
Yeah, I guess you have a point. They could do it in novels or anything else, though.
Yeah.
Which would be interesting. I would want to see what happens
Maybe
there.
they do.
Probably
and the question is, did he visit Draconia as the second or the third Doctor? Because he did only just gain his freedom like one serial ago.
Or the first.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Can you imagine Hartnell with the Draconians, though? He would just yell at them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But maybe that's what the situation needed. You never know.
Either way, the Ogrons must... Oh, wait. There was something I wanted to mention before that.
Reverse.
There's a nice little touch here, and this might be unintentional, is that when they first meet the Emperor, the Doctor and Joe all bow to the Emperor, but the Master bows first, which I thought was a nice little, possibly subtle touch to his character. This was possibly just completely unintentional.
You could totally just be reading more into it than was there.
Yeah, but if I'm not... I think it's a nice and subtle touch to the the dynamic between the Master and the Doctor, and also the Master's character, because as evil, cunning, and underhanded as the Master is, he knows to respect authority, obviously just to get what he wants. But I think he falls more... He knows that he needs to fall, or he knows when he needs to fall into social norms and practices a lot more than the Doctor does, at least the third Doctor. And yeah, the second and first too.
Counter argument. 1, I didn't notice that. 2, the monster did enter the room first.
Doesn't mean you, enter and bow in succession.
Well, he would be there first to bow. He would be in position to bow first. So he would make that connection first. I mean, the Doctor's been to Draconia before, so he knows the customs and he knows he has to bow. So I don't think he would intentionally let the monster go first.
I don't know, I just feel like the Master would pay more attention to these sort of customs than maybe the Doctor would, at least between. I said the second and first Doctor too, and same holds true for them. But also the Master and the Doctor were standing right next to each other when this happened. Joe was sort of standing off to the side slightly, just kind of in line with them.
Yeah, I don't think it was intentional.
We could just be reading too much into it.
I think you're reading more into it than is there. I think it was
Maybe.
definitely just unintentional.
Either way, the Ogrons attack like I tried to explain before, because obviously the Master contacted them with his, what's the term you used?
Transponder?
Yeah, never heard that before. Are you Googling it right now? I don't doubt that it's a word.
No,
I'm just saying.
Googling it a transponder is one of two type of devices, because I want the exact definition.
Okay.
Oh. A flight transponder is a device that emits an identifying signal in response to an interrogating received signals. In communications, satellite transponder gathers signals over a range of uplink frequencies. I don't even know what that second definition means.
Well, now you know. Knowing is half the battle.
Okay, well, anyway, the Ogrons attack and make off with the monster, but not before getting one of themselves captured by the Draconians, undermining the monster's plan, because now the Draconians have proof that they're not attacking the humans, that the humans aren't attacking the Draconians.
Right, but the Master, rather, also kidnaps Joe. And we didn't mention, well, we did mention right at the beginning that, okay, Joe's wearing something sensible this serial. We didn't mention that she changes into what looks like, well, the Doctor mentions it looks like a martial arts uniform, and he's right. It does.
Yeah, but you're forgetting the boots she's wearing with that martial arts uniform. The boots that have laces that go up the entire length of the boots.
Maybe she got her black belt off screen. We don't know.
You look like you're going to have a nervous breakdown over Joe's outfit.
We don't know. Maybe she was, maybe she'd been training off screen this entire time, and she'd finally become a master of Venusian Aikido.
Maybe she can even beat the
whatever.
Doctor. The week after the Auton Cyberman battle, we can have the Dr. Joe battle it out. Venusian Aikido.
Fantastic.
Just turn Doctor into a wrestling program. Well, anyway, the Doctor teams up with his newfound Draconian buddies to head back to Earth to show them the Ogron and convince them that it wasn't the Draconians who attacked. Only on the way, they get attacked by the Ogrons. The Ogrons... This is where they capture Joe, actually. The monster doesn't take Joe when the Ogrons attack the first time. The Ogrons take Joe when they recapture the captured Ogron. They take Joe with them, I guess, as collateral. But anyway, the Doctor and the Draconians are kind of in a pickle now because they don't have any proof of what they're saying, and an Earth battleship has just shown up and scared off the Ogrons.
And put the Doctor under arrest.
Because the ship was stolen, and the Doctor's currently piloting it.
And the Doctor tries to explain like he usually does, but this guy doesn't even listen to a word of it. This guy's just like, nope, you're under arrest, we're going to board you.
Pretty sure the Doctor gives up halfway through the explanation. He's like, I was trying to bring it back because the guy who piloted it had me prison. Never mind.
We also didn't mention that the ambassador, Draconian Prince, has been there throughout all this, and he's still there with the Doctor, and they kind of just forgave him. I guess the Doctor kind of just forgave him for what he tried to do earlier, which I guess needed to be done, just to perpetuate any sort of goings-on and relations that the Doctor might have with the Draconians, and to help stop impending war, but...
Impending war, it's like almost started war, because as we get to Earth, it's revealed that basically people on Earth are rioting for war to start, and General Williams wants to attack now, and he wants to attack fast.
Yeah, the president watches some video commentary from some guy complaining about the entire situation. He's in a field, sort of a grassy field, and I was like, wait, isn't Earth completely... what is even the term? God, I can't even think today. Isn't Earth just completely not habitable for the most part.
The mutants in the colony in space is mentioned that Earth is hilariously overpopulated. But, I mean, like we mentioned, this is kind of the uprise of the human empire.
Yeah, I guess.
So it could just be starting right now with the whole, let's build a city everywhere there's land. See that square foot on the ground? Build a city.
I think we even right now in modern times know that that's not a good idea.
Yeah, pretty much, I think.
Not we as in you and me, but we as in like the human race. Yes, I speak for the human race now. No.
Like Arthur Dent in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. You're the lost human, you speak for the human race. And everybody else just goes with it, I guess.
Either way, more is revealed as to the backstory here.
Right.
With the whole backstory with the Draconian Human War. So the prince calls out Williams on what he did. You know, he started the war.
Mm-hmm.
And Williams reveals that he only attacked because the Draconians were armed. And yeah, this is dumb. The prince reveals that they weren't armed, but they were just riding a battleship class cruiser for the sake of it, I think he says.
Well, he says because they were bringing a noble, and how else would a noble travel?
So it was just a case of cultural misunderstanding. I guess that's what usually starts war. Or just battle over resources, but yeah. Williams apologizes, and I made the note, a politician actually admitting he's wrong?
Well, he's not a politician, he's the leader of the military.
It's basically the same idea.
That's a broad, sweeping statement that I'm not going to corroborate or deny.
He's involved in politics, obviously. Either way, he does admit that he's wrong. Go Williams.
Go Williams.
So they decide to head off to the Ogron home planet.
Right, the doctor says that the only way that they'll be able to prove now to both sides that they're not attacking each other, to the common people, not the leaders, because the leaders obviously know at this point that they aren't being attacked, is to go to the Ogron home planet. And Williams, I guess, in an effort to make up for his previous misdeeds, offers to lead the expedition to the Ogron planet.
Right. They get there surprisingly fast.
Well, I think Williams has the quickest ship in the galaxy.
It made the
Kessel in less than...
What was it, 12 parsecs?
Something like that.
I'm sure there are people out there who are probably going to get on my case. Probably not actually, but whatever.
Does anyone...
There are people out there who would get on my case for messing up that line, but...
Well, I mean, with the new one coming out and all, that resurgence in fandom, they might get on your case. They might get on my case. They might just hate this podcast for that one line.
I think we had a Han shot first discussion way back when.
Did we?
I think we did. Either way, they get to the Draconian home world. We're skipping some parts with the Master and Joe, but I think we're just going to explain this now because it's easier. And I also just want to make the comment now that the Draconian homeworld? No, the Ogron homeworld is actually the antimatter universe. Did you notice that?
What?
Yeah. It's the same rock quarry. Well, I don't know if it's the same rock quarry, but it's a rock quarry. So I was like, hey, they're in the antimatter universe.
Every alien planet on this show is a rock quarry?
Yeah.
Remember, Colony in Space was a rock quarry. The Mutants was basically a rock quarry. This is a rock quarry. The antimatter. The Crotons.
Yeah, so apparently this whole show has been taking place in the antimatter universe.
No, it's just been taking place on Earth in a rock quarry, and it's just all in the Doctor's mind.
What if it's actually just a bunch of schizophrenics playing out their fantasies in a rock quarry?
And someone just has a camera to film them?
Yes.
He's like, this will make great TV.
Maybe he's a schizophrenic who thinks he's a TV writer or director.
What if we're schizophrenics and this show is all in our mind? Every reference to this show ever has just been in our minds.
I wouldn't doubt it. Anyway, The master has locked up Joe. Yeah, she and the doctor spent a grand total of about 2 minutes outside of jail cells in this serial. Not jail cells, I guess, but just cells. And Ogron brings her some food. Some disgusting looking
Well, we skipped
porridge.
the hypnosis scene. And the fear scene.
Right, where she sees the Drashig again.
Yeah. Well, and the monster reveals that he has another one of those devices, and first he tries to hypnotize Joe, and Joe busts out a nursery rhymes, Mary Had a Little Lamb.
Went all Humpty Dumpty.
And then one that I didn't recognize.
Yeah, I didn't recognize the third one. I'm guessing it's just a British thing that I don't know.
Yep. And, the monster can't hypnotize her if her mind is filled with nonsense, so he's like, well, guess I'll have to use another method. And Joe references Terror of the Autons by saying, well, once was definitely enough for me. And then,
Wait, what? I didn't get that reference.
She got hypnotized in the Terror of the Autons in her very first
Right.
serial.
Okay, I did get that reference. What am I saying? God, I'm just out of it today.
That's okay. Well, anyway, he breaks out the fear device, tries to use it. Joe... That's how episode 5 ends, actually. And episode 6 begins where she is yelling at the monster that she doesn't believe it, and it's just the monster, and she doesn't believe it, and I guess she builds up an immunity to the device somehow. And, it doesn't work, so the monster's like, well, I'll have to think of something else then. And he had mentioned before that he was going to use Joe as bait for the doctor. And,
He does, eventually. I just thought of this now, but wouldn't the Ogrons in the vicinity have been affected by the device?
Yeah, but I don't think there are any Ogrons in the room at that point.
It affects a pretty wide area.
It is just a handheld version.
I'm not even going to make a big deal about it. There are much more glaring things on this show to call out, which we have in the past. But yeah, the Joe gets locked up. The Joe. Yeah, that's never going to stop.
Every companion, I think it's happened to at least once, except maybe Dodo.
Katarina.
And Katarina.
Pretty sure it's happened to Dodo.
And Sarah Kingdom.
Yeah. I think Sarah Kingdom and Katarina are the only two where we probably didn't have a chance to...
To be fair, they were in there for like 4 episodes each.
Yeah.
Katarina threw herself out an airlock. Let's just bring that up again, because that scene was great, wasn't it, guys?
Let's just bring up everything we've been trying not to mention every episode.
Tagana, which you've already mentioned.
And Quillian.
Jeez, this episode is so bad about references and everything, but we're gonna get there in the end, and we're gonna do it, because the doctor arrives.
Because the end is actually amazing.
Yeah, it is. The master is currently off who knows where, and Joe breaks out of his cell with the porridge, like Kiana's mentioned, with the spoon. With the spoon for the porridge.
She looks at the porridge disdainfully, and then realizes she has a spoon and the ground is soil, and she digs her way out and tries to... Well, she makes her way to a radio transmitter and tries to contact Earth, but the master reveals that it was all a part of his plan, and that now she's bait for the doctor. And that's when the doctor shows up.
Question, why did Joe need the spoon to dig a hole? It was soil. Couldn't she just use her hands?
Good point.
I mean, I guess she did use most of her hands plus the spoon. Maybe the soil was too hard to dig with her hands, and that's why she needed the spoon. I don't know.
It was literally just a regular teaspoon type of thing.
I don't know.
Well, hey, the master's plan was foolproof in that case. She either digs herself out with the spoon or with her hands. I mean, I guess he overlooked the fact that she could have just stayed in the cell. But, the doctor would have gotten there anyway.
I think the monster knows her. I think the monster knows Joe and the doctor well enough to predict what they're going to do.
Yeah, I think he actually makes that comment to Joe. Yeah. But either way, there's this one brief scene where an Ogron lights some candles next to a cave painting of some weird-looking creature.
Yeah, which is only briefly touched upon later. The doctor shows up with the crew, consisting of the Draconi ambassador and Captain Williams, the A-team of the Empires, and they're going to lay down some hard law, because they're going to find out who these Ogrons are, and they're going to make it. Except on the way, they'd been attacked, and the Doctor had applied some hot fix by going out into space, fixing the ship, and coming back in. And then they enter the atmosphere to land, and the fix basically falls apart and almost kills them. But they land okay, because you can't just kill the Doctor off in the middle of the show, can you?
So they start wandering around the quarry, and
the quarry.
It's what it is. And we see the creature depicted in the cave painting show up. And you made the comment that it looks like the Axon mutated form, and it does. It looks like a less intense version of that, actually.
Maybe it is. I think that'd be a cool, weird parallel to have the Axons be the aliens that the Ogrons were worshipping.
It'd be interesting. There would be a lot of interrelated villain shenanigans in this serial, especially with what happens in the last 6 minutes. But they deal with the creature somehow or the other. Really not fleshed out plot point.
I think the creature just shows up and the Ogrons run away because they kind of worship it as a god and they're afraid of it. And then I don't think it attacks the Doctor and co because I think it's just a peaceful creature that just likes to roam the planet.
Huh, I guess.
But all the Ogrons run inside and mention that the creature showed up, and the monster's like, well, what about the Doctor? What have you done, you fools? I'm gonna have to take care of this myself, aren't I?
That reminds me of something way back. I think this was episode... must have been 4 or 5, I don't know. But the Master is pursuing the Doctor and Joe in a spaceship, and he an Ogron makes a comment like, oh, Master, how do you know that the ship we're pursuing is the Doctor? And the Master says, well, it's the only ship on course for Earth. And the Ogron says, but Master, we're on course for Earth. And the Master just flips out, and I love Delgado's acting here because he just goes, of course we're on a course for Earth, you idiot! We're following them! Except he does it way better than I just did.
Delgado's just a fantastic actor, and he plays the monster brilliantly in the show.
He's not that he was bad to begin with, but he's gotten better. You know, as he's fallen into, his niche with the Master as a character. He's gotten better.
Of course, and then he's blowing up the Ogrons for running in with the creature, and he's, you fools, what are you doing? But he's contacted someone on the radio and mentioned that, he'll meet them at the landing zone. And then the Doctor and Co are walking, they see a ship land.
I was just going to say, I'm sure it's not those, that party.
It's the Daleks. The Daleks show up over the edge of the cliff and the Doctor's like, oh.
Literal cliffhanger. Get it?
No, the only literal cliffhanger in the show was that one serial where the TARDIS is hanging on the edge of the cliff and is about to fall off, and you're like, whoa, what's gonna happen? And in the next episode it falls off.
What was that, the
monk? The Time Meddler, you mean?
Yeah, Time Meddler.
No, the TARDIS was on the beach in that one.
Oh, right. Yeah, we had this discussion, actually.
Yeah, because it fell off a cliff a couple weeks ago, too.
It was also in Curse of Peladon, but that wasn't the one. Anyway. Was
it the Romans? No, it wasn't the Romans.
No, the Romans, they just had it in that garden that they decided to stay at for like 3 months. But anyway. Yeah, the Daleks were actually in league with the Master. I think their plan was what we mentioned. The Doctor God, how do I phrase this? Their plan was what the Doctor dismissed earlier, in that they want the Draconians and the Earthlings to just go at it and pick up the pieces.
Pretty much, yeah.
And as I was watching this, I think the Daleks appear maybe 5 or 6 minutes to the end of the episode, plus minus like 45 seconds to like a minute because of the end credits. So I was like, how are they going to resolve this? Because the Doctor and Joe get thrown back into the cell. And the Doctor and not the Doctor, the Master and the Daleks, they continue to further their plan. And that's redundant. Continue to further their plan. Yeah. Anyway, I checked the timestamp here, and it was maybe 5 minutes to the end of the episode. And I was like, how is this going to be resolved?
I was thinking they were just going to pull like a Deus Ex Machina, just throw it in there like some, mystical, magical weapon of destruction that just wipes out all the Daleks and they leave happily, like maybe the sonic screwdriver or something, I don't know.
But what we actually got was way better than that.
Pretty much. Let's explain it.
Right.
Joe reveals that she had taken the fear device from the master's desk earlier, in addition to the other things she had taken when she was calling for help, as the master had thought she would. And the doctor's like, oh, this is brilliant. And he uses it on the Ogron, and the Ogron thinks he's a Dalek.
The Ogron guard.
Yeah. The Ogron thinks he's a Dalek, and they get out.
I just wanted to say, was that Pertwee doing the Dalek voice?
It might have been.
I think it was. It sounded like him,
Yeah.
which was interesting.
And they run through the caves, and they show up at that candle thing with the painting on the wall of the monster again. And, they make a silly comment like, oh, the Ogrons must worship it or something. And then they carry on, just that throwaway scene that the Ogrons worship the monster.
Well, who knows? Especially considering how this serial ends. They might touch on that again. Because this is actually the first serial to lead into the next one. Presumably, they're not going to just throw all this out and have it be a completely different story next serial. That would be disappointing.
No, I don't think they do. That's just
Just
dumb.
bad writing, but...
Plus, next week, the next serial is named Planet of the Daleks.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to just lead into the next one.
Right. They've led into the next one before in the sense that previous serials have taken place directly after the serials that came before. Like, there's no room to put any audio dramas or novels or anything in between. No, they just lead right into each other, but they're still very much separate stories, unlike what this is probably going to be.
Right.
But we should probably just explain the last minute, because we still haven't done that yet.
Well, the Doctor and Joe run to the TARDIS. They send Williams and the Ambassador back on Williams' ship to go, tell their respective peoples about not fighting each other, and they need to launch an assault basically on the Daleks. And
Yep.
the Doctor and Joe encounter the Master, and he's got a gun on them. There's the Ogrons, and the Doctor activates the fear switch, and the Ogrons all run away. And then you hear this shot, and then you see the Doctor on the ground, presumably dead, although it immediately hard cuts to later when Joe is like, Doctor,
Yeah.
I thought you were dead. The Doctor stumbles into the TARDIS and uses the TARDIS's telepathic circuits,
Right.
getting their first reappearance since the Time Monster.
Right, he presses his hands on the console,
Yeah.
and he sort of closes his eyes and
reveals that he's contacting the Time Lords.
dun dun dun, serial
And then it
ends.
This might be the first serial that ends on a cliffhanger.
No. Before Reign of Terror. Although it was
Which one was that?
the one where the Doctor says he's going to kick Ian off the TARDIS next.
Oh, the Sensorites.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I'd call that a cliffhanger.
Maybe.
I'm not arguing that it was good, but I'd call it a cliffhanger.
Maybe. But presumably this serial immediately leads into next week's serial, which would make it the first definitive two-part serial, as in
Well-
two serial combined into one, excluding Mission to the Unknown, because that doesn't
Yeah.
really count as its own serial, let's be honest.
And it wasn't. There was the Mythmakers in between, so it
Yeah.
didn't directly lead into it. But yeah, not presumably, but possibly they're going to flesh out the weird creature thing, and it might become an integral part of the plot. Who knows? I think it's just weird that they'd mention it in passing just a few times and have it not really do anything. So maybe it's sentient. Maybe, I'm just making a wild guess here, but
Axon Dalek partnership.
my guess is that perhaps it's sentient, and they're going to delve into more of its backstory with the Ogrons, or team up with it somehow. I don't know.
Possibly. I'm just curious to see how they're gonna, because next week's serial is 6 parts, how they're gonna break out a 6-part serial from the premise they've built already. Because the premise is, presumably, I'm making predictions here, obviously, is that, this is my prediction, is that the Doctor is going, to the home planet of the Daleks, hence the title, Planet of the Daleks, for the next serial, while Williams goes to the humans, and then the Draconian ambassador goes to the Draconians to fight against the Daleks, and the Doctor's going to do something on the planet of the Daleks, presumably Skaro, but it could be any other planet. So my prediction is, my question is, how are they going to build a 6-part serial out of the Doctor heading to the Dalek plan. Obviously, part of that will come into how the Time Lord's going to play into this.
Yeah,
because
I was going to say, the Time Lords are involved somehow. They're going to be.
Because the Doctor's contacting the Time Lords, obviously. But I'm interested to watch for next week's serial.
Well, hopefully they have a few good plot twists up their sleeve, and maybe it'll be maybe the first 2 episodes of next serial will be sort of misleading, kind of like this. Maybe not, because they're sort of more into the story now, more into the heart of the story, or where you would expect more action scenes. But when you look at it, this serial, presumably, obviously we haven't watched next serial, so we're kind of just making predictions here.
Yeah.
Presumably this serial was a setup. It was all just the rising action for Planet of the Daleks.
I wouldn't be surprised, though, if episode 1 of Planet of the Daleks was kind of slow and meandering, because of the fact that it's 2 different serials, they would need the next episode to not reference too much of the plot of this serial and kind of rehash some of it for any new viewers who kind of missed the previous serial and hopped onto this one.
I guess. I don't know. I mean, I guess there's a large viewership of people who might just skip a serial if they don't think it's interesting, or say, like, oh, I'll come back in 3 or 4 weeks whenever the serial's over.
I mean, and obviously they're not releasing any of these on home video yet.
Well, yeah, I mean, home video doesn't even exist yet.
I mean, they do eventually, but obviously, if they miss the serial, there's no way for them to just go, oh, I'm just going to go watch it on the BBC website or whatever in anticipation of the next serial or whatever.
Right. The only way to rewatch would be if they aired reruns. Which they did.
Yeah.
I don't know how frequently, but we know they did. Especially when they integrated it into the plot in, what was it?
Wheel in Space.
Yeah, Wheel in Space.
Yeah. I mean, there's not... I don't want to say too much about this serial because I think a lot of it's going to tie into next week, and I don't want to say anything without knowing the next part of the story. Really?
So that's fair. I just hope the Master gets... Well, I know I've been getting on the case of several serials, such as the Sea Devils, for like, okay, the villain of the week is actually just a pawn in the Master's plan. They might do the same with the Daleks here. But I do think the Dalek Master dynamic is going to be...
Master plan. Hey-o! That was a good one.
Okay, I'm just not even going to say anything after that amazing, fantastic, incredible specimen of a joke.
No, that actually leads into what I mentioned at the beginning that I wanted to talk about the Master, and that this serial did the Master differently than the other ones, and this one wasn't, this one didn't play into the trope that the Master's got a villain, and then the villain turns on the Master at the end, and like, he has to team up with the Doctor to get out.
It also doesn't play into the trope that the Master is, while cunning and evil, also a complete idiot at times. Because if you just look at this serial alone, he won.
Yeah, he did. Like, definitively, he won. I mean, this whole serial was a lot of the Doctor and the Master seeing who was thinking more steps ahead of the other one.
Yeah.
I mean, you think the Doctor's got the upper hand, but then, the Master has already thought of the fact that Joe's going to escape her cell to set up the distress beacon, but then, it's revealed that Joe had taken the fear thing from the Master. There's a lot of... The whole serial is already planned out to the end, but you see one step at a time, and every step of the way a different person is ahead, and then it ends. The Master's got the upper hand at this point.
Right, it's like watching some sort of professional chess match, which was hinted at in the fact that they play some variant of chess in the penal colony. No.
Now you're really reading too much into it. I mean, the Master one could at least possibly be plausible, but the chess one, not even close. No, but I'm glad that the Master got a chance to be the equal of the Doctor without having to rely on some subservient race. And, regardless of what happens in the next serial, we know he comes back. Between the next serial and the Green Death in The Lost of the Gathering, where he just plays into the trope again, gets, double-crossed, and then, oh well.
Well, I did mention back when I disliked the Third Doctor more than I do now, that I like the Master more than the Doctor. And while I've warmed up warmed up. Yeah, I've warmed up to Pertwee. I still like the Master more. I think part of it has to do with Delgado's acting and how I like Troughton's portrayal of the Doctor more than Pertwee's.
Yeah.
But I just think the Master's a more interesting character, especially in this serial.
Yeah,
the bad guys are usually more interesting.
Well, the thing is with the bad guys, unless they're a recurring villain, you have to
quote-unquote bad guys.
You have to cram all of their character development into one serial, whereas the Doctor, you have his whole character development over the whole run. And it's more likely that you'll look back at the end of a Doctor's run and be like, oh yeah, the Doctor wasn't that bad. Whereas with the villain, so to speak, you've only got that one serial to make your judgment unless he's coming back, like the Master has.
I guess, and that does lend the villains in the show more to tropes than, say, the Master and his companions. God, the Doctor and his companions.
It happens in the audio dramas.
The villain of the week or villain of the month, I guess,
right,
lends itself more to tropes than perhaps the Doctor and his companions, though they do. The Doctor and his companions are tropish at times, but I like tropes.
Tropes are good in moderation, I think. If you just had an episode that was just every trope in the book and they had just thrown it in the script, I think it would actually be terrible. Just because there's so many tropes that would conflict with each other.
Not specifically limited to Doctor Who tropes.
No, yeah, definitely.
But I like, I just like character tropes. Like Shakespearean kind of roles and stuff like that. And, I don't know.
I think in moderation.
I think most people agree with you. And not me, where I just flat out want everything to be predictable.
Well, if this serial had one thing going for it, it was definitely not predictable.
That it was not.
And I think that kind of ends my discussion of this serial. I think we'll talk more about it next week when we find out whether or not the serial was related to the next serial.
Well,
because I think there'll be a lot to talk about in how well or how poorly this serial set up the next serial, because obviously doing that talk requires next week's serial.
Yeah, for all we know right now, they could just tenuously relate it to episode 1 and then branch off in a completely different direction. Mm-hmm. But we'll have to see.
This feels like when we did the invasion of the Daleks master plan, when we split it over 2 episodes, and we were kind of left off in the middle and were like, well, we can make predictions, but we can't really say how good of a story it was till we had seen the second part.
Mm-hmm. Imagine a scenario where the Daleks don't show up in the last episode, and it just ends with the Doctor and Jo stumbling into the TARDIS and the Master won.
What about it?
Interesting.
It'd just be like, oh, the Master won.
I think this serial could hold. It would be able to hold itself up just with that on that ending. That it's uncharacteristic for the Doctor and Jo to want to do that, but I still think this serial can stand on its own 2 legs.
Yeah, I think so, but I think it would be uncharacteristic of the Doctor to leave at that point.
Yeah,
I think it would weaken the ending if the Master had just won and there was no ulterior plot, because it wouldn't make sense for the Doctor to just leave when the Master's still there, and the Master still has the ability to just say, blow up William's ship, destroy the evidence, and still lead the Draconians into humans into war.
Yeah, it's definitely not something they would write, nor is it within the Doctor's character to do that, but I would be satisfied with such an ending.
Because it's predictable?
It's not predictable to have that happen.
So you're saying you like unpredictable things now?
I'm not saying I never said I disliked unpredictable things. I just said I don't dislike predictable things.
Double negatives. How do they work?
But yeah, we'll have to watch the next serial. I think we've exhausted any comments we can make on this.
It was just a good serial, and it's my favorite Third Doctor serial so far.
Still wouldn't go that far.
What do you like over this? Still the Silurians?
The mutants, Time Monster, because it was just weird and funny. Silurians, maybe, kind of up there with this. I like this a lot, though.
Well, email us at thedoctordecadentvegetable.com. questions, comments, concerns, fan fiction about the Autons fighting the Cybermen or something. I
Or
don't
Joe
know.
fighting the Doctor.
Or your thoughts on that collaboration episode that went out this week. How exciting.
Yes.
Be sure to check that out on, that's on all of the platforms we release our episodes on, aka iTunes, at which you can find us at Trust Your Doctor, and on YouTube, at which you can also find us at Trust Your Doctor.
Facebook, Trust Your Doctor, like the page, like stuff. We're now on Twitter, 2ID Podcast. Check us out. And next week we continue, hopefully, with this cool story in Planet of the Daleks. But until then, the end.